Chapter 3 of Frog and Toad Are Friends by Arnold Lobel. If we look at the table and contents, Chapter 3 is called The Lost Button. What do you think this story will be about, The Lost Button? Predict what you think is going to happen with Frog and Toad in this story, or this part of the book, and then let's see if you are right when we finish The Lost Button. Toad and Frog went for a long walk. They walked across the large meadow. They walked in the woods, and they walked along the river. At last they went back home to Toad's house. "Oh, drat," said Toad. "Not only do my feet hurt, but I have lost one of the buttons on my jacket." "Don't worry," said Frog. "We'll go back to all the places where we walked. We will soon find your button." They walked back to the large meadow. They began to look for the button in the tall grass. "Here's your button," cried Frog. "That's not my button," said Toad. "That button is black. My button was white." Toad put the black button in his pocket. The sparrow flew down. "Excuse me," said the sparrow. "Did you lose a button? I found one." "That is not my button," said Toad. "That button has 2 holes. My button had 4 holes." Toad put the button with the 2 holes in his pocket. They went back through the woods and looked into the dark paths. "Here's your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," cried Toad. "That button is small. My button was big." Toad put the small button in his pocket. A raccoon came from out behind the tree. "I heard that you were looking for a button," he said. "Here is one that I just found." "That is not my button," wailed Toad. "That button is square. My button was round." Toad put the square button in his pocket. Frog and Toad went back to the river. They looked for the button in the mud. "Here's your button," said Frog. "That is not my button," shouted Toad. "That button is thin. My button was thick." Toad put the thin button in his pocket. He was very angry. He jumped up and down and screamed, "The whole world is covered in buttons, and not one of them is mine." Toad ran home and slammed the door. There on the floor he saw his white 4-hole, big, round, thick button. "Oh," said Toad, "it was here all the time. What a lot of trouble I have made for Frog." Toad took all of the buttons out of his pocket. He took his sewing box down from the shelf, and Toad sewed all the buttons all over his jacket. The next day, Toad gave his jacket to Frog. Frog thought that it was beautiful. He put it on and he jumped for joy. None of the buttons fell off. Toad had sewed them on all very well. Is that what you thought would happen in the story? Is that what you thought would happen when they were hunting for the lost button? Have you ever found a lost button? What did you do with it? Could you make a design out of buttons that you might have that at your house? That could be an art project, maybe. I'll see you next time.